This is KEXU 96.1 FMLP. I'm JV, and this is Free Aztlan. Today I want to talk about the prison strike. Very, very important event coming up. You know, prisoners right now across the U.S. are on hunger strike and work strike. So this is very, very important. You know, these people are suffering, tortured, you know, held in these concentration camps. And, you know, if it ain't for people outside of the prisons, outside of those concentration camps, their voices and demands are not going to be heard. And I call them concentration camps because just like in Nazi Germany, you know, these camps, you know, they held the enemy of the state, just like the Nazis did. They held the enemies of the state, of the Nazi state. And one of the things that a concentration camp does is it captures those who are resisting the oppressor state. They capture them, they torture them, and oftentimes they murder them. So, you know, when I say concentration camp, you know, some people that are not aware of prisons, not aware of their social reality within U.S. imperialism, that are not aware of the struggles that people are going through with the state in different forms of resistance, you know, I'm not stretching the truth. They are concentration camps. And, you know, when I say resisting the state, you know, the state, you know, they're not here to help us, they're here to oppress us. So many times it's just like today, you know, we could turn on the corporate media, and what they will say is they will depict people's struggles around the world that are struggling against capitalism, struggling against oppressor nations, such as the Palestinian peoples in Israel, you know, with Israel. They're struggling against the state of Israel. People are very conscious, revolutionary people. You know, if you go to Gaza, if you go to Palestine, this is passed on family to family, neighbor to neighbor, and there's a high concentration of revolutionary people in Palestine, and they continue to teach the next generation how to resist. So it's very, very important that we understand Palestine, because if we understand Palestine, we'll understand our own oppression. Just like New Africa, just like the First Nations, Boricua, and all the other oppressed nations within these false U.S. borders. So it's very important to look to examples around the world, because you're going to see a reflection of yourself. Palestine, every time I hear of Palestine, it's a reflection of Aztlan. It's an oppressor nation. America is an oppressor nation. Oppressed peoples around the world, oppressed nations. It's very important that we understand, we study, we understand the social reality of other oppressed people, because when they're victorious, we could find examples that we can adapt to our circumstances and environments, and we can be in. Prisoners are participating. They're not working. It's a labor stoppage. It's a hunger strike, and they're doing anything that they could to stop the oppression, the repression that they're facing within the prisons. You know, a lot of people don't understand. They think that prisons are for rehabilitation. Prisons are not for rehabilitation. Prisons do not rehabilitate us. They warehouse us. They have us there, and in many times when they identify those who are, you know, influential, revolutionary, or challenging and resisting in some way, they will pluck these prisoners out of the general population and place them in their torture units. So they design these shoes, these control units, security housing units, and they design them for one purpose, and that's to destroy their enemies. So they see us as the enemy. You know, anytime we organize or, you know, attempt to promote our nations and our struggles and the people's struggles, they see that as a threat to their security. They see us as a threat. You know, to most people who are resisting them, they see as enemies of the state. So, you know, contrary to what people believe, prisons are actually there to control the oppressed nations. They control us. They control us by locking us up. They target mostly military-aged males from within the oppressed nations, 15 to 35. They target them, you know, in the U.S., they target us. You know, it's not like back in the days where they can just, you know, blatantly, snatch us up, lynch us, and do what they want to do. Now, because so many people, other people have assimilated into America, what they do now is they have to use the laws in order to justify their national oppression, because that's what racism is. It's basically national oppression. It's the oppressor nation, the mostly white nation, oppressing oppressed nations, brown and black folks. So this is what they do. They use their laws. They use their laws in order to continue the long lineage of oppression that they've inflicted on people here on this continent. So, you know, they've been doing it since they landed on this continent. And so, you know, when I hear about them talking about migrants, you know, they like to use the term immigration, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they want to respect people's lands and people's national territories, but they want to impose their legal justification for occupying this land. You know, we're suffering under an occupation. Our land is, these are occupied territories. You know, and what the state does, what America does is they will take your land and then tell you, hey, we're all one, we're all together. Just, you know, let's have peace and it's all good. You know, I explained this to somebody recently, and I said it's like somebody breaking into your house, you know, saying this is my house now, sitting next to you on your couch, and then telling you it's all good, we're one family, what are you tripping on? You know, it's all good. Let's have peace, you know, let's work and let's contribute to this house. Let's buy stuff for this house to run, and it's all good, you know. And that's basically what America did. And they came in here, they took this land, and now they want to expect us to have peace. They want us to accept it and say we're all one and it's all good, and why are we tripping? Well, we're going to continue to trip until we get our land back. So in 1848, when they stole this land from Mexico, from that point on, the Chicano nation has been criminalized. You know, they started with the new greaser laws. You know, the new greaser laws were laws, you know, they called them the foreign miners tax law. And what they did when they discovered gold up in California, you know, a lot of migrants came in, you know, and they came in to mine for gold as well. So one of the things the oppressor nation did was impose these foreign miners tax laws. And these laws said that anybody prospecting for gold had to pay an exorbitant fee, had to pay a very high fee. These people are coming barefooted from Mexico, from Central South America. They're coming from all these countries with nothing. They couldn't afford these fees. They couldn't afford these things. And so this prevented them from having access to the resources. So this is one of the ways, this is, for the Chicano nation, this is the beginnings of our criminalization, because once people said, you know what, I don't have money for that, I'm going to mine for gold anyways. What happens is they would capture them and imprison them. So this is the first beginnings, the stirrings of criminalization for the Chicano nation. When I say Chicano nation, it's those deriving from Mexico who are living and existing under U.S. imperialism. So as we exist under U.S. imperialism here in America, we're developing. We're developing into a new nation, and this is what happened to us. So the greaser laws of yesterday, now they have the new greaser laws. You know, I wrote an article about this. It was published in Poor Magazine and also in California Prison Focus, and it's called The New Greaser Laws. And in that article, I explained that, you know, the greaser laws from yesteryear in 1849, you know, all they've done is redevelop them. So now they have these stringent, quote unquote immigration laws. You know, they have all these other laws. They have these gang enhancements. These are the new greaser laws. You know, in prison, we can't even speak Spanish language. We can't even speak our native indigenous Nahua language. We cannot do that because they call it gang activity. We can't get tattoos of, you know, Mexica, or as some know it as Aztec artwork, because they call it gang related. They use our culture in prison in order to justify labeling us as gang members. We cannot speak our language. You know, when I was in prison, I corresponded with a professor from Indiana University. This professor was very into the Nahuatl language, which is, you know, the Mexica language, or what some say the Aztec language. And, you know, I corresponded with him, and he also had a newsletter with Nahuatl, teaching Nahuatl, talking about the culture and everything. And he attempted to send me some material. The prison stamped forbidden language and send it back to him. So this is a form, this is derived from colonialism, because if you look at any country in the world, any colonial power who's colonized the people have always attacked their culture. They will attack their language, they will attack their culture, and criminalize it in, in an attempt to get these people to assimilate into this oppressor nation. And this is what they've done to us. This is what they've done around the world. They did it to the Filipinos. They did it to the Koreans. They've done it. Any colonial power has always done this. So, you know, this is just a snapshot of what prisoners go through. So prisons ain't there to rehabilitate us. You know, they are there to wield the power of the state, to break those who resist them, to break revolutionary prisoners, and to continue this ongoing onslaught of oppression that we all experience. So one of the things that the hunger strikers are asking for, you know, they're asking for better conditions. They're asking for many different things. Started on the 21st, we had a couple of days ago, we had an event in San Jose, in support of the hunger strikers and the labor strikers. We had this event and we marched from Cesar Chavez Park to City Hall. One of the things I found interesting is people were coming up to us off the street, riding bicycles, walking down the street, and they were like, oh yeah, it's starting today. They knew, they heard about it. People were hearing about it. And so that was a beautiful thing. And it was also beautiful, I want to thank the Chicano Youth Revolutionary Squad, Jóvenes Activos, who came out to participate and to support the hunger strikers. Jóvenes Activos from San Jose, and they do great work, assisting their community and, struggling in any way they can. So, the hunger strike, it started on the 21st. The 21st is very symbolic. For those who don't know, it's the anniversary of the assassination of George Jackson, assassinated in San Quentin. So, prisoners throughout the U.S. are using this day as an act of resistance, and they're resisting the state any way they can. So it's very important. I want to also mention that there's going to be ongoing rallies and events and actions going out across the U.S. in support of the prison strike. You know, one of the ways you can get involved is to look on the Facebook page, National Bay Area Prison Strike Solidarity Committee, and you will find updates on any state you're in. Get involved, participate, because these prisoners are basically struggling for us all. You know, they're struggling for, if any one of us would go into prison, get arrested today, we would suffer as they're suffering. We would be tortured as they're tortured. So it's very important. These prisoners are on the front line, occupied territories. You know, America stole this land from the First Nations. They also stole this land from the Chicano Nation. And this is our national territory. We continue to organize, to resist, to struggle, and to contribute to the Chicano movement of today. And our resistance never went away. It's still here. A new generation is contributing. And as time goes on, you know, more people are going to get into the fight and contribute to this beautiful struggle. You know, also I want to mention that the Chicano Moratorium is this week. You know, the Chicano Moratorium, for those who don't know, was the biggest Chicano event in history. And, you know, they basically in the 1970s organized and struggled and organized an event, and 10,000 strong. And, you know, they struggled against the U.S. using Chicano bodies to fill the ranks of the U.S. military. The U.S. military today, you know, it's important to note that the highest percentage of recruits are coming from Raza. So we need to strengthen the Chicano Moratorium today. And we need to stop the flow of these brown bodies going into the U.S. military. And those non-Chicanos should also support this, because that is, at this point, the highest form of internationalism, to support the Chicano Moratorium of today. Because if we stop the flow of brown bodies into the military, which is the highest recruit rate amongst all peoples within these false U.S. borders, if we stop the flow of brown bodies, guess what? We stop the strength of the U.S. military. And once we stop that flow, we also stop oppression around the world. So when people talk about internationalism, a lot of people throw internationalism around. Well, they need to do a deep analysis and understand that what's the biggest way to stop U.S. imperialism today? What's the biggest way to stop it? How can you stop it from where you live? Well, the biggest way to stop it is to stop the flow of brown bodies. Well, how are we going to stop the flow of brown bodies from entering the U.S. military? Through a Chicano moratorium. So non-Chicanos need to get involved, learn about the Chicano Moratorium, learn ways to support it. This is internationalism. If you're an internationalist, support the Chicano Moratorium. There's going to be events this month, you know, throughout the U.S. You know, I know Oakland's having an event. You know, I know there's an event in Los Angeles. You know, these events are promoting the idea of the Chicano Moratorium, so that we stop the flow, we stop the U.S. military from building their manpower. We need to stop that, because the U.S. military is nothing but oppressors abroad. You know, we suffer national oppression within these false U.S. borders. The U.S. military inflicts national oppression abroad to countries around the world. These countries, these peoples ain't done nothing to us. They have done nothing to the Chicano nation. There's no way I am going to support the U.S. military. There's no way I'm going to promote the idea of oppression on a world scale. You know, I know what I go through. I know my national territory that's being occupied at this time, and all the other oppressed people. How am I going to support other oppressed people having their land occupied by U.S. imperialism? We're not going to do it. And we're going to continue to organize, educate people, because we are not Americans. We are not American. We derive from the Chicano nation. That's separate from America. America is the oppressor nation. They're the ones occupying our land. They're standing on occupied territories, occupying the First Nations land. They're the ones that enslaved black folks. They're the ones that are colonizing Boricua. They're the ones around the world that are supporting terrorism. Those are the real terrorists. And the foot soldiers of America here are the pigs. And they're the ones that are inflicting the most horrors to the people standing in these false borders, the oppressed nations. And so we need to understand what we're dealing with. We need to separate, as Chairman Mao said, know our enemies from our friends. We need to know America is not our friend. And we need to stop teaching our children to grow up to join this oppressor military. You know, what we live under is oppression and occupation. And we need to stop it. And if we continue to believe that we're Americans, we're going to continue to oppress ourselves and our fellow brothers and sisters. So the prisoners, they seem to understand this most, because I don't see no hunger strikes out here. I don't see no labor strikes out here. The prisoners, they're giving it their all. Everything they have, they're laying it on the line, because prisoners have the least to gain from America continuing to function. And, you know, we're not going to do that. We're not going to help them to function, because them functioning means oppression and suffering for all of us. So we need to get involved. We need to learn. We need to learn that we are not Americans, first of all. And, you know, Asada Shakur said, you know, first of all, you got to teach people that they're oppressed. Because, you know, without them knowing they're oppressed, you know, they're not going to fight their oppression. They're not going to fight. They're not going to struggle. So that's one of the key things. We got to teach people that you are not American. You are not from the white oppressor nation. You know, you are Chicano, you are New African, from the Black Nation, Boricua, First Nations, other oppressed nations, but you are not American. America is the oppressor nation. And this is JV, and this was Free Aztlan, KEXU 96.1, FMLP, Po People's Revolutionary Radio. Thank you.